Okay, we're back from the small recess. Our next candidate is not scheduled till 5:15. So since it's noticed on the agenda that way, we will take another recess till 10 after 5 and come back and convene for the 5:15 interview of Mr. Dessert. Since the agenda has it published that way, that is the expectation. So I thank you for your patience, and we'll reconvene at 10 after 5. So thank you. What that was. Okay, I think we're back to live broadcast of this meeting of the Sturbridge Police Selection Committee. We have a couple minutes before we can start our next interview at 5:15. So I want to thank everybody for their perseverance this afternoon. It looked like 2 hours was a little bit more than necessary, but we want to give the candidates every opportunity to tell us about themselves and ask us questions and respond thoughtfully to the questions we ask them. So thank you for your patience this evening. We'll take one more minute before we dive into the next round. So, has everybody gotten their snowshoes ready for tonight? No? No snowshoes, no snow shovels ready? No.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I just hope they don't have to salt so earlier in the year. That's just heartbreaking. In October, you got to salt the roads. It's heartbreaking.
I saw the plows set up today. I'm like,
Yeah.
That's not a good sign.
Yeah, all the plows are set up. DOT's ready to go. Our Sturbridge is ready to go. It's that time of year. Okay, check the time here. So we're going to dive right in and get started with our next candidate, which is Mr. Earl Dessert. I'm going to ask the board members to go around, or the committee members to go around the screen here and kind of introduce yourself to Mr. Dessert, and we'll start there. So, Mr. Hillman.
Good afternoon, Chief. My name is Reed Hillman. I am a stable hand, live on Bushnell Road in Sturbridge.
Good evening.
All right. Ms. Leo.
My name's Kristen Leo. I'm a representative from the Tantascwa School Committee, longtime resident.
Good evening.
Okay. Chief Woodson.
Shane Woodson, police chief in Southbridge, where I've worked for 25 years, and your neighbor, as you know.
Good evening, Chief.
And Mr.
Good evening.
And Mr. Hatchfield.
I'm Klaus Hatfield. I'm a 40-year resident of Sturbridge. Family grew up here, went through the Tantascwa school system, so I'm pretty familiar with the town, but have no connection at all with policing. So I'm imagining that my role here is to basically represent the Sturbridge community in a general kind of a way. By profession, I'm a laser physicist, and the interest I have locally I expressed by being a longtime member of the Sturbridge Rotary Club.
Good evening, and nice to virtually meet you.
Okay, so we have 19 questions that we'll work through, and you can take your time on the responses. Each candidate gets a chance to make an opening statement and a closing statement. So unless there's any questions or comments from the committee, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So Mr. Dessert, why don't you give us an introductory statement this evening?
All right. Good evening. Nice to meet you all. My name is Earl Dessert. For those of you that don't know me, I'm currently the interim police chief for the town of Sturbridge, and I have been since May of this year. I also serve as the town of Wales police chief. Now, to tell you a little bit about how I got to where I am, I grew up in Brimfield, and I've always wanted to be a police officer since I was just a young kid. When I went to Tantascwa in 10th grade, I was fortunate enough to, at the Sturbridge Police at the time, had an Explorer post. Explorers is a division of the Boy Scouts of America, and I joined the Police Explorers, and at that point, I really knew I wanted to pursue my career in law enforcement. I knew it was a calling for me. I graduated from Tantascwa, joined the United States Marine Corps. I enlisted and did a 6x2 plan, 6 years of active reserves, 2 years of inactive. In the United States Marine Corps, that's kind of where my life changed a little bit. I was instilled with some core values such as the honor, core, commitment. Like I said, my life started changing after that. I had my first opportunity at becoming a police officer in 1997. I joined the Broomfield Police Department, where I served as a patrol officer, a sergeant, and a lieutenant. In 1998, I was hired as a Warren police officer. And shortly after getting hired part-time as a Warren police officer, my chief at the time, Ron Syriac, called me in and said, hey, I got great news for you. I got a full-time police position, and I want to hire you, but I want 5 years of service from you. So at that time, I had a young child, and I was pretty excited to be sent to the Agawam Police Academy. After getting out of the police academy, I worked in Warren for about 5 years, gave the chief what he wanted, 5 years, then I joined the University of Connecticut. I became a police officer in Connecticut, worked there and that was at the main campus. I went from a 6-man police department to a 75-person police department. So it was a little bit of a change. From there, it was different policing. I wanted to do something different, and the Vermont State Police were hiring at that time, so I joined the Vermont State Police and I became a state trooper. I worked in Vermont for close to 4 years as a trooper, and after 4 years, the Sturbridge Police Department was hiring. I always had a high respect for the Sturbridge Police Department. I was very knowledgeable about the Sturbridge Police Department growing up in the area, and I applied for the position. And before I was hired, Chief Ford called me in his office and he said, you know, you're coming to us as a state trooper. You know, there's not going to be any promotions here for a very long time. I got a young command staff. Are you sure this is something you want to do? And I said, you know what? I love being a police officer. I do want to come here. And he hired me. 3 years after he hired me, I was promoted to sergeant and then lieutenant. While I was a sergeant, I realized if I wanted to further my advance in my career, I had to educate myself. So I went to Quinsigamon Community College, where I got my associate's degree in criminal justice. Then I went and got my bachelor's in criminal justice from Westfield State University, and most recently I graduated Anna Maria with my master's degree in public administration with a concentration in emergency management. I've also been very fortunate attending, working here at the Sturbridge Police Department. I've been able to attend some very prestigious police executive development schools. Just to name a couple, I attended the FBI LEADA series, which was ultimately 6 weeks of training, a first line training for sergeants, middle management for lieutenants and above, and I have also attended the executive class. I also did the same for Roger Williams series. Roger Williams University went through the 3 series for that, first line, command level, and executive series for Roger Williams University. I also attended the Southern Police Institute, University of Kentucky, for managing a small law enforcement agency and internal affairs. But the most prestigious class that I'm the most proud of was the FBI National Academy. I attended, and that was a graduate of the 272nd session in 2018. If you're not familiar with the National Academy, less than 1% of law enforcement get to attend that academy, and I attended it there. You live in Quantico, Virginia, at the National Academy for 10 weeks, and you take a series of executive leadership classes, such as media relations, public speaking, and various other leadership classes. More importantly, I'm a dad, 28-year-old daughter. I'm very proud of her. She's a Navy veteran. She did 7 years in the Navy. She wanted to join the Marines, and I said, no way. So she went into the Navy, and her first duty station was in Bahrain, just off the coast of Saudi Arabia, for 2 years. I also have 2 grandchildren, grandson, granddaughter. They're amazing. Unfortunately, everybody lives down in Florida. So right now, the only way I see them is through FaceTime or Zoom, so I'm very thankful for technology. I can't wait to get down there and see them. And just for on a personal side note, stuff I like to do is hike, bike, anything outdoors. I use the trail system around here in Sturbridge all the time. And thank you for listening to all that.
Okay, thank you. All right, first question, and some of this you may have covered already, but it's, you can reiterate if you need to. Why do you want the position of police chief for the town of Sturbridge, and what have you done to prepare yourself?
Well, I'd like the position of police chief for the town of Sturbridge because I've been with the town of Sturbridge for coming up on 14 years, and I'm very proud of working for this organization. And I started preparing myself for this position from when I started working in Sturbridge. I knew if I wanted to progress through the ranks, I had to educate myself, had to get as much specialized training I had. I had to listen to my supervisors, I had to watch, I had to learn, and I'm just very proud of the organization. I'm proud of the policing product that we put out. We're a service-oriented police department, and I would be proud to serve as the police chief.
Any follow-ups to that? Okay. The position of police chief is challenging and demanding. What would you say are the 5 essential duties of a police chief, and why?
Leadership. You have to be a leader in order to be a police chief. And as a police chief, you need to have the ability not just to tell people what to do, but have the ability, I believe, to influence them. And being a good leader, you can influence people to do stuff. I also believe police chief needs to be a good communicator. Needs to get his message out to his officers and to the public. Without communication, there'll be failures, there'll be breakdowns. Police chief has to be a good listener. There's people out there that want to be heard. Sometimes that's all they want, is to be heard. Internally, externally, but you got to be a good listener. You got to be somebody that's able to build public confidence, trust within the community. It's important to have trust, especially this day and age. With everything that's going on with policing, you need to have the public trust. You need to have the trust of the men and women that would serve you as well. I also think you got to be approachable as a police chief. People got to be able to know that they can come see you. I think it's important that your door's open, and when you're in a position like that, you got to know that you have to keep your door open, and people don't want to be able to. They want to be able to feel comfortable going to you. They don't want to feel like, if they go into the chief, there's something wrong.
Any follow-ups on that, or any? No? Okay, as a chief, you will have to make decisions that your subordinates may not like or agree with. How would you handle this? Give examples.
Well, being a supervisor, period, you have to make decisions. It's not always the unpopular decision, but it's the decision that has to be made. You got a mission with the police department, you got a mission with the organization, and unfortunately, the popular decision is not always the right decision. The easy decision is not always the right decision. So, there's been many times throughout my career you're making decisions, whether it's assignments, scheduling issues, somebody wants a day off, but maybe somebody wants a day off, but it happens to be Thanksgiving Eve, which is a busy holiday for drinking and driving or something like that. And somebody comes to you as the chief or the lieutenant or sergeant. You make that decision that, I'm sorry, I cannot give you the day off. This is an important day for the organization. The organization's mission comes first. There's decisions like that made constantly. And I think it's the delivery on how you present it to the person, especially today with our younger generation. You often have to give explanation and let them know why you're doing what you're doing or the decision you make. And sometimes the Marine in me doesn't want to do that, but I do. I take the time and explain it, and often I think it's the delivery that goes a long ways.
Any follow-ups on that? Okay. All right. What is your vision for the Sturbridge Police Department?
Well, I can say my vision is to have a continued community-oriented problem-solving police department. We have an outstanding relationship with our community, with our neighboring agencies, and I want to continue that. My vision is to bring more technology into the department. Technology can sometimes add as a force multiplier, and sometimes when you don't have certain things, it's good to look at technology to help you do things that would make the department more efficient and effective. So I would stay mission focused with solving neighborhood problems, working with the community, and just trying to make it more effective and efficient than we currently do. I think technology would help with that.
All right. Any follow-ups? No? Okay. Next question. What part of the job don't you like and why?
Well, I think the obvious one is the death that you sometimes come across. You come across stuff and you have to do notifications, and it's nothing pleasant about it. And it's probably the worst, it is the worst part of the job. And you have to tell somebody their loved one is no longer with them. And I don't think it can get much worse than that.
Okay. Any follow-up? Okay. Next question. Young children who are basically good kids can sometimes make bad decisions. Describe an instance where you had to deal with this type of situation and how you handled it.
Well, being a young kid myself, I can relate back to getting breaks as a kid myself, whether it have been, doing little foolish things. When I was young, growing up in town, Sturbridge Police probably moved me along from hanging out at Burger King or whatever when I was young. But as a police officer, I've encountered this. So I think that those encounters as that I dealt with as a young child helped me recognize that, it's important to give juveniles the opportunity a break. Just because they do something when they're younger doesn't always mean it has to be held against them forever. And I've seen people, I've dealt with kids hanging out, maybe getting in minor altercations or whatnot throughout my career, send them home, call their parents, maybe they had some alcohol at one point, and you notify the parents to make sure that parents are going to make to address the situation without getting them into the juvenile justice system. In 2018, the Justice Reform Act came out, and that really helped don't want to say it handcuffed the police in ways, but it certainly was a help to juveniles of keeping them out of the juvenile justice system, because, you know, sometimes police officers are so mission focused, they don't think that far ahead of the impact that one person or one juvenile could impact the rest of their life. Maybe that young kid wanted to be a police officer, and that one thing that he did could now affect him becoming a police officer because he was a juvenile and he got in a fight with somebody and he was arrested and charged with assault and battery, and it's on his record, you know. So I think you gotta know that that's okay to do, and it's okay to think outside the box when it comes to dealing with juveniles. The arrest isn't always the solution.
Yes, Klaus.
I'd like to ask what your opinion is in terms of getting civic organizations working together with the police to try to work with kids at high school level, and that, say, for example, after school classes, where you bring to them, you know, values and get them to explain the right and the wrong. You know, I guess where I'm coming from is, in the back of my mind is, do we really have a system where the kids, as they go through high school, begin to develop a sense of, you know, the police are okay, they're not my enemy, and by the way, I'm getting some values, establish a value system that the kids can rely upon as a means of being preemptive before they go and do something dumb. So my question really is, do you have experience of working with civic organizations, say the Rotary Club, the Lions, whatever, and actually working with high school kids?
No particular clubs, but we do have a great school resource officer program that is in town, in our elementary school and our high school and junior high. And in addition to that, we do have programs where our officers get involved at driver's education classes, dynamics and democracy classes. We send officers in to teach classes. And when we select our school resource officers, it's not just hey, you're next in line, you're going to be a school resource officer. We're very selective on how we pick these people to be in our schools. We can't pick officer arrest everybody to go up to our schools. We want somebody that is going to be up there doing what you said, have an open dialogue with these kids, have a safe environment, let them know, hey, Officer Jones is in school today, hey, let's go say hi to him. And it really opens up that communication between the police officer and the students, and I've seen great progress with our school resource officers. You go up to the school and I'll be walking with one of the school resource officers, and people will be coming up, hey, Officer Dana, hey, Officer Dana, hey, Officer Dana, hey, Officer Murray, hey, Officer Murray, you know. So it's great that we have that, and that is in place, and that's one of the goals of the SRO program, is to build that bridge between law enforcement and the younger generation. Does that help you?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Next question. What's the most serious mistake you have made in your career? What did you learn from it?
The biggest mistake I made was I told somebody something that I thought was accurate when it wasn't accurate. It was something that I did with a good heart, but it turned out to be not an accurate accounting for what actually happened. And I'm not talking about a lie, in no means. So I told somebody not to worry about their child, and it didn't end up well. So my lesson from that was, don't ever give information till you have all the accurate information, because sometimes bad things can happen. So just wait till you have all the information. It was a mistake of the heart, not of the mind, but it was definitely a valuable learning lesson that I never committed twice. Any
follow-up to that? No? I don't quite know what that sound is. I think it's outside. Next question. What specifically would you do to foster an environment of cultural, gender, and racial diversity and tolerance amongst your staff? Can you give an example of what you may have accomplished elsewhere and what specifically you did?
Well, training is important. Sending our officers to training, in fact, we have done this. You send officers to implicit, explicit bias training. You also send the message that any swaying outside the policy or going outside the policy on situations like that would be a serious offense. You That's right. No, that's all right. If you have groups or organizations in town that represent the specific communities, certain communities, you partner with them, you meet with them. You develop a relationship. Is that me getting feedback?
I don't know why all of a sudden. Keep going.
Okay. So I think it's important that you develop a partnership. You train your officers, implicit, explicit bias. You have model policies in place that help you deal with any situations that may arise. And I think that's a great way to get through any of those issues that may arise.
As a follow-up to that, how about recruiting a diverse workforce?
Recruiting itself has been an issue over the years, but I think it's important that your police department represents the community you serve. And when you're recruiting, you want the best possible candidates that you can bring on board with you. And I think Sturbridge does a great job in our recruiting efforts, but this day and age, I can tell you they're not lining up at the door to be police officers like they used to be.
I'm sorry, we're getting some feedback and I don't know where it's coming from. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna mute the committee members, and if you have a question, raise your hand. That may help. Sorry about that. One, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep. So I think I answered it.
Is there a follow-up to that question or answer? No? Okay. Next question, what qualities do you look for when hiring a new officer?
Look for a well-rounded individual. I look for somebody who's a good communicator, somebody who's prepared for the position that they're applying for. Look for somebody with good moral character. Look for somebody who, it's nice when you can bring somebody in to the police department and they know they want to advance in their careers. It tells me that if they want to advance, they're going to come in and most likely they're going to do the best that they can to shine. But when I'm starting just hiring, you're really looking for the basics. You're looking for the honesty, the trustworthy, the good moral character of an individual, and somebody who is all in and wants to come in and be a police officer.
How do you know when to send someone to the academy or, you know, try to hire a certified officer?
Well, historically here in Sturbridge, we've always looked for experienced officers. But I would like to consider sending people to the academy, because I was given that chance and I would have never been able to pay for myself to go to the academy as a young father. So what I would look for when I want to send somebody to the academy, I would look for somebody local, preferably somebody that's in the community or in the school district. Somebody that I think is going to give us the return for what we invest in them, because it's going to be a big investment for the town to send somebody. I think by hiring locally, you're more likely going to get somebody that is willing to stick around and not jump ship as soon as they can.
Any follow-ups to that? Any follow-ups to that? No? Okay. Next question. How do you set expectations with your employees? Do you communicate regularly, weekly or bi-weekly meetings, written policies, or use performance evaluations?
I do all of them, actually. As far as my expectations for each rank that I've been in, when I was a sergeant, I set my expectations in writing. I met with my shift and I laid out the expectations that I had for them. And I told them, you know, I really only want to be a sergeant if I have to be a sergeant, but these are my expectations. And if you're not meeting my expectations, it's going to be a performance issue, and we will be talking about that. And I'm not talking about just coaching issues, I'm talking about expectations. Same with the lieutenant's position. When I became a lieutenant, I met with my sergeants and I gave them the same thing. I have regular staff meetings with now, and we have had them along. I have regular staff meetings both with my sergeants, and what I've done is I've opened it up and I bring a patrol officer and a dispatcher and the lead dispatcher in part of our staff meetings to make sure my message is going out, not just from my supervisors, but there's a patrol officer sitting in there that can hear what the message is and they can deliver that as well. We do performance evaluations on all of our employees twice a year, a mid-year, and then a final review. And although for union issues, they can't be used for much, but I know I value, and I valued my supervisor's input when I used to get them. And I tell my sergeants when they are evaluating their employees to be very candid with them. And again, maybe it's not a popular discussion or a comfortable conversation that you have with them, but if somebody doesn't know that they're not performing to your expectations, then how are they supposed to improve? Something that else I've also done, and I continue to do this, as things change, whether it be weekly, bi-weekly, anything coming up. For example, we're getting ready to hire a new dispatcher. I make sure all the department, the entire department, from the animal control officer to the administrative assistant, that, hey, we're hiring a new dispatcher. They're on the agenda for Monday night. They're going to be appointed. So when somebody walks in the station, people aren't like, oh, who's this person? So I think it's important that you share information with the employees so they feel like they're part of the group and they're not just getting this stuff through other people. So I think when it comes from me, it's very important and it means something to them.
Any follow-ups?
I'll just add on that. There are some times where the directives or memorandums go out when we do have policies that go out. Whether it's new policies that come into place, we do have a system called PMAM, where if I come out with a new policy, it goes into an electronic system where every employee has to go in and read it, and they'll have to electronically sign it, and that verifies that they signed this policy or this directive, or maybe it's a training video, but it electronically tracks the communication that I'm sending out to them. And then in addition to that, we'll go over roll call daily, any briefings, any new stuff coming out, the sergeants will come out with roll call and give give any directives or any new things that are coming out to the entire department.
Okay. Share with us a time when you repeatedly gave someone corrective feedback and it did not seem to have any effect. Was this a direct report? How serious was it? What was the result?
Just, can you repeat that one
Sure.
more time for me?
Share with us a time when you repeatedly gave someone corrective feedback and it did not seem to have any effect. Was this a direct report? How serious was it? What was the result?
Yes, I've had that happen. I had a direct employee that was assigned to me, and there was constant communication for not doing the job. She was not meeting the job expectations. This officer was continuously told, and of course we start with training, coaching, training, mentoring, and when that failed, we proceed with discipline. You know, I think there's a difference when it comes to coaching. You know, mistakes, you can coach mistakes, you can mentor mistakes. Then there's incompetence or irresponsibility, which results in discipline. So what happens when there's irresponsibility and incompetence? The discipline gets progressive. Ultimately, the situation that I dealt with, the employee was terminated.
Any follow-ups? No? Okay. Next question. What types of crime prevention measures do you believe are the most effective and why?
Well, I think I've been a firm believer in traffic enforcement. I have always gone by this standpoint. Most crimes start and end in a motor vehicle, whether it be a domestic, a housebreak, a kidnapping. There's generally a motor vehicle involved. If you have a high visibility of traffic stops, I think it's a deterrent. I think people know that if they come into town, there's a likelihood that they may get stopped. So maybe they'll think twice about committing a crime. That's one method of crime deterrent, is traffic enforcement. But there's also, you know, data-driven crime, where fortunately Sturbridge right now, we're small enough that we can track our stuff pretty easy. If we start seeing hot spots or continuous breaks in an area, we can do focused patrol, data-driven enforcement, focus in that area. Just like if we start having multiple crashes in one area, maybe there's some enforcement action that needs to take place, education in that area. So fighting crime by watching your data and responding to that data has been a proven way to reduce crimes.
Any follow-ups on that? No? Okay. Next question. Police departments and law enforcement agencies are finding it very difficult to attract qualified applicants for police officer positions. Discuss your philosophy and techniques relating to recruitment and retention of law enforcement personnel.
You know, recruitment and retention has been a problem with policing for many years now, but more so recently over the last 8 months, 6 months, it's been much worse. And from when I was younger, police officers were lining up for jobs, and it's not the case now. But my plan for Sturbridge for recruiting and retention is I want Sturbridge Police Department to be the best place to work. I want the officers to be happy. I know I can't make everybody happy, but I can focus on 80%. of the officers and make them happy. And I'll do that by I share information with them, like I said. You know, you believe, if your employees know you believe in them, you know, you encourage them to go to school, you encourage them to go to training. Like I said, share the information, you trust your employees, you know, you give them a badge, you give them a gun, trust them to go out there and do their job. You know, don't micromanage the police officers. A lot of police officers don't become police officers because they want to be told for 8 hours exactly what to do. You already set your expectations. If they don't meet your expectations, then certainly there's an issue. But my goal would be to make the police department a great place to work, so my own police officers will be my recruiters. They will be the ones reaching out to their friends or people they know in other departments and saying, hey, come on over to our place. It's a great place to work. You know what, there's some freedom over here. Yes, there's a high level of accountability, but you know what, if you do your job, you're gonna succeed and you're gonna be happy working here. So that would be my plan, make my employees happy. They can be my recruiters, and I think that will be very successful when how it will take place.
Any follow-ups from anybody? No? Okay. Next question, how will you deal with the press?
I'll call the town administrator.
Thanks.
So I would deal with the press truthfully, transparently. You gotta get ahead of it. If there's an incident going on, you should, as the chief law enforcement agency, you should get ahead of it before they're asking you questions. You should be putting stuff out to them. I think that's a big help. You develop a rapport, a relationship with the local reporters. If you have something coming in, you call them, hey, I got a story for you. You tell them what's going on. I think it's very important that you stay ahead of the story before the story starts chasing you. Whether it's bad or good, you know, sometimes, you know, our police officers take calculated risks every day. And when they do that, sometimes there's bad things that happen. And as a result of that, you know, media may want to become interested in that. But I think if something does happen and you're honest and you stay ahead of it and you're not trying to hide anything or cover anything up, you will be okay with the press.
Any follow-ups? Next question. How will you communicate with the public?
I like to communicate with the public several ways. Social media, I think, is a great way to communicate. I send out Facebook messages. I get some pretty positive feedback about my communications on social media. That is one of the primary ways we focus on our communications today in law enforcement. A lot of stuff is through social media. I encourage my supervisors to put stuff out as it's happening to social media, to the public, so they know, they want to know. I encourage, there's dispatchers that have access rights to our social media to put stuff out there. It's important too, when you're communicating, again, you have to have that partnership of trust in the community, so everything that you tell the community has to be completely upfront and honest. You have to be forward with them, open with them, and I have found sharing information on social media with them is very positive feedback, even if it's simple stuff such as road closures, something that we may not have thought about several years ago, putting something out, or you know, if it's an emergency, obviously I'm going to communicate through our code red emergency system we have, and I'm going to get messages out there for emergency. I'm going to communicate with whatever way I can, social media, code red, reverse 911, however we can to get the emergency messages out. But for general communications, social media is good, but even better than social media is unfortunately right now, we're having a difficult time with this, but as you can tell by this interview, we're not having a face-to-face interview, but the public likes to see you out at events. I like to go to events and see people. I like to go to the concerts on the Common and meet people, talk to people, listen to people. What's their concerns with the community? Maybe coffee with a cop is another great communication tool. There's many different ways. Ideally, it's FaceTime, going to groups. If you're invited to groups such as the Lions Club or any types, the Legion, any of those types, if you can get FaceTime real time with those people, it goes a long ways.
And he included the Rotary in that, Klaus, I heard him.
Yes, Rotary too.
Sorry, what happened?
You kicked him off.
Did I?
His voice.
That's okay. I was just saying that that I was really listening for that, you know.
Yeah, we lost your camera, Klaus.
No, it's on.
Okay. Did I turn that off?
My camera's on. Wait a minute. Yeah, it's indicating that it's not on, but the indicator light on the computer says it is. So I think you must have my camera muted.
No, I can't.
I can't turn it on here. Oh, just go ahead. It's not a problem.
Oh, sorry. All right, any other follow-ups on that? Oh, okay.
There we go.
There we go. All right, good.
There you go.
Thank you. All right. Next question. Have you ever dealt with a tragedy while on duty? Please describe how you maintained a professional attitude in the face of crisis. What would you do to support your department during such circumstances?
Unfortunately, I've dealt with many tragedies in my 24 years of policing. My first one was a double fatal involving two younger gentlemen. And, you know, when I first got there, I was a new police officer, and I pulled up to the scene, and there was two people ejected in the road. And my first thought was, somebody call the police. Then I just realized, wait, I am the police. I got to hold this together. I got to tend to these people. And I did. I held my composure, and I did what I did at the scene to attend to them. And it's tough, and that's what police officers have to deal with, stuff like that all the time. And that whole thing unrolls into a bunch of different components of mental health for police officers. But how I deal with it in Sturbridge is, for example, we had a fatal not too long ago right on Route 49. And what I did is I called the Central Mass Crisis Team, had them respond to our station, and I had all of our officers that were present and invited the fire department over to have a discussion about what they saw, what they smelled, and basically what the fire department, I call it a debrief, the fire department calls it a hot wash. We debriefed on the situation, and what I've done most recently, what I'm actually just waiting to get in the process of going through to build off that, is I've created a police chaplain program, and I'm currently waiting to implement the policy on that. That's been submitted and forwarded to, but that's internal and external. If my guys experience something out on the road that's tragic, and unfortunately, a lot of times, maybe they don't feel comfortable going to a police chief or the police lieutenant because they got stuff buried in them, and there's a stigma that goes along with it, that you know what, if I go tell the lieutenant or the chief that this is eating me up because I just went to a dead body or something, you know, he's gonna take my gun, send me home, send me to the psychiatrist, tell me you're not fit for duty and all this stuff. So there's a great stigma that goes along with this. So I'm trying to create this chaplain program to maybe circumvent myself as the lieutenant or the chief, hopefully, where they don't have to come to me, and they'll have some type of venting system where they have somebody that they feel comfortable speaking to. So I think that's very important to have different avenues. You know, you got EAP. You mention EAP to an officer, and they're going to basically laugh at you. But you know, that's the stigma. One of my reports in college was about police officers. Actually, the Fraternal Order of Police Officers did a study. 90% of police officers don't feel comfortable reporting their mental illness, and that's why suicides are through the roof. So they got to have police suicides is through the roof. You got to have alternative plans that give these officers some place to vent, some place to go, and not have to suffer consequences such as losing their job or placed on leave. So it's a very tough thing to do because you got a guy that's carrying a gun, but our job is also the one that put them in that situation where they're dealing with the stuff that they're dealing with. So I think make sure there's avenues there to deal with that type of crisis.
Any follow-ups on that? No? Okay. As chief, what will be your policy when it comes to interacting and utilizing the state police given their location in town? For example, if there's a need of a trained canine, will your directives ensure the state police are called, LEC canine is called, or will it simply be that the closest competent canine gets called?
I really feel like having a canine, state police in general, the first thing I did within the first week I took over as the interim chief is I contacted all of our surrounding agencies, including the state police. I went over and I spoke to Lieutenant Ackerman over at the state police barracks, and I ensured that the Sturbridge Police is going to have a commitment to our relationship with the state police, and that was a very good conversation. If there's a canine, we got our own canine on duty. Obviously, if my canine's on duty, we're going to use our own canine. If it's going to be a multi-part mission, if somebody's life is in jeopardy, we are going to get whatever dog can get there, the quickest they can get there, and we are going to deploy the dog. We are on one team. I believe we're on one team, and I believe in working in close relationships. To me, it absolutely makes no sense if I have a dog sitting at the Sturbridge State Police Barracks and one of my guys needs a canine, and the closest canine is in Webster, Mass, or Marlborough, Mass, that I'm going to wait for that canine to come out. It doesn't make sense. So the short answer is the closest canine available. If my canine my canine officer is going to get the first shot at a canine call in our community. Life or death, if he's not on duty, the closest canine is going to be utilized.
Any follow-ups on that? No? And this is a little bit touched on what Klaus was talking about earlier. How would you develop and sustain partnerships with community organizations to address challenges such as substance abuse, racism, and domestic violence?
Well, we have policies in place for substance abuse, bias-based policing. You know, the opiate crisis is still ongoing. As of yesterday, there was 11 overdoses this year in Sturbridge, 1 fatality. So it's ongoing. What I've done is we've implemented 2 designated officers to the SIMS program, which is the Critical Incident Management System. 2 officers are designated to enter data regarding our overdoses into the SIMS system. Those 2 same officers are dedicated to follow up with the overdose the substance, the victim who overdosed, follow up and hopefully get them in touch with a substance abuse coach, give them resources, let them know what resources are available. This is a fairly new program. It's a partnership with the district attorney, Joe Earl's office. And another thing that I did many years ago is that through Joe Earl's office, I wrote a grant and I brought Narcan into the police department. Within several hours of our first shift of deploying it, on second shift, we had a save using the Narcan that was deployed with the officers. So we do have partnerships going there for the drugs. We're working with the DA's office. You got to have resources. The opiate crisis, you know, you got to be able to. It's three prongs to that. You know, you can't arrest your way out of the opiate crisis. You got to educate the younger people. You have to rehabilitate the people and get them the resources, the ones that are using it, and arrest the suppliers. That's what you have to do to help that. Domestic violence, that's another thing. You have to, we have victim witness advocates. We follow up, the Sturbridge Police Department follows up with every domestic that we go to. We will, after we go to a domestic, whether it's a verbal or not, once we clear all the paperwork, whether somebody's arrested or they're not arrested, within 1 week after that, that officer reaches out to the victim and sees if there's anything else that we can do. We do offer them services at the scene, put them in contact with victim witness advocates. We help them with whatever way we can. If they need rides to court, if they need to get to a safe house, we will do whatever we can. So it was domestic violence.
Racism and substance abuse.
Racism, again, we have bias-based policing training. In fact, Southbridge has got, I believe, implicit and explicit training, bias-based policing coming up, and that we're trying to send the entire department to. That is something you also make partnerships with. Early on, we had the Black Lives Matter protest come to town. The first thing that I did was reach out to the organizers. I asked them to come meet me so I could talk to them and say, hey, what can we do to work together on this to make this a peaceful night so you can get your message out to the public and nobody is, there's no harm, no foul. And it worked. So communication goes back to being a good communicator, a good listener, and you know, obviously racism within the police department would be zero tolerance from me if there was ever any suspected racism, and I shouldn't say suspected if it was confirmed, because there would be a full investigation, but zero tolerance for that.
Any follow-ups on that question? Next question. Explain the techniques you would employ to keep the Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator informed about projects, problems, issues, etc.
Well, I would continue to do what I've been doing since I've been the interim chief. Anything that I think is newsworthy or noteworthy, or something that the town administrator may catch wind of that may be concerning to him, I make sure he's notified, whether it's a phone call or a text message, hey, just a heads up that we're doing this. I do leave that up to him to notify the selectmen. However, I do have scheduled bi-monthly meetings with the Board of Selectmen, so if I have to, if they have any questions for me at that point, I would certainly answer their questions there too. But again, one of the first things I did for opening up my line of communications when I was put in as acting chief is I reached out to all the selectmen and the town administrator, and you know, I asked them, you know, told them if they need anything from me. Here's my personal cell phone number. You call me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them. I reached out to the town administrator, asked him what he wanted from me, so I knew right from the beginning what was expected out of me. I didn't want to guess what I have to present to anybody. I just went straight to the town administrator and said, what do you want from me? And he told me. And I've been doing a great job at that.
Okay.
At least I think so.
It's your question to answer. Any follow-ups to that? No? Okay. All right. That is the end of the prepared questions. At this point, the candidate will make a closing statement to provide any information that we haven't covered in the prepared questions, or his opening statement that he feels would be beneficial for the committee to hear, to know. So, Mr. Dessert?
You got to talk for an hour and 3 minutes, Earl.
Okay, no problem.
He's over at 17.
So I guess my closing statement is, if the concentration areas that I would plan on running with the police department would be transparency, accountability, constant communication with the community, internally, externally, and outreach programs. I want to continue doing our outreach programs to keep building the trust with the community, come up with new ideas, innovative ideas, stay involved with the youth in the community. I think that's important. I think I have the operational, technical, and tactical proficiency to run the police department. My education and experience, I think, is unparalleled. I've done a lot of training. I've been preparing for a long time to become the police chief. I didn't know that Chief Ford was leaving this soon, and that was one of the reasons I put in for the Wales police chief. I wanted to build my resume even more. And, you know, I hope that tonight I answered the questions enough to convince the panel that I'm the right person for the position, and I hope that you consider making the recommendation for me to become the police chief.
Are there any other further comments from the committee members, or any other questions? I lost Kristen. Sorry. There we go. Mr. Dessert, do you have any questions for us?
I don't really have any questions. I just want to thank everybody. I feel very humbled sitting here, having the opportunity coming full circle from starting in the Sturbridge Police Department as a young kid, as an explorer, coming full circle, being in front of you folks and interviewing, now to be the police chief for the town of Sturbridge. So it's been a pretty great experience, and I thank you all for volunteering to be on the panel. It's an important role that you're all playing for the town of Sturbridge, and that's all.
Okay. Klaus, we lost your camera again, sorry. If there's no further questions or comments for Mr. Dessert, I'm going to let him go, and then we can spend a few minutes on wrap-up for the evening. So excuse me 1 minute, and
Thank you.
I'll be right back. And we're back. So thank you all again for participating. I think at this point, if you can kind of go through your notes and get me some feedback on your thoughts and impressions on the candidates, and we can go from there. As I said at the opening, I'm not looking for an answer tonight, but if you can get me your feedback, I think that'd be our next step.
I'm not clear, Jeff. I mean, we've obviously scored the different questions here. You want us to go and give you the numerical breakdown?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And I'll put that together and get the results out for our next meeting.
Okay.
All right? All right, does that sound okay to everybody?
Yep.
So you want us to complete our forms and send them back to you, Jeff?
Or give me the raw score for each candidate, and then I'll put them in a spreadsheet. Or I'll just average them out.
Or just the scores? Okay.
Yep. Okay. Sound good?
Can do that.
Okay.
So we're going to get together again to discuss.
Yes, we can. I'll give everybody a chance to kind of think about the interviews and review their notes, and then we can get back together and discuss the candidates and go from there.
So how are we going to finally determine? To me, it's very clear, but are we going to go on a basis of the total scores for the two candidates, or are we going to simply make a decision when we meet and simply say, I vote for this person or that?
I would probably be looking for a recommendation from each committee member. Your preference.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Good.
Anything else? Nope. All right. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
All right. Motion from Klaus, second by Chief Woodson. Okay. Ms. Leo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chief Woodson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Hatchfield, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Mr. Hillman, how do you vote?
No.
Okay, I'm going to turn this off. You can stay staring at your computer as long as you want. All right. And I vote yes. So thank you again, and we'll get back together soon. Thank you.
Correct.
All right.
Good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.